Salute, BookTube. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you for being here. I know I haven't posted in a while. It's been maybe over a week. And the reason for that is just at the end of May, just the last week of May, I had an emergency that required me to travel abroad to attend a family issue. Let's just put it that way. So that meant that the last week of May I didn't read as much as I would have liked, and I couldn't make any videos. But I'm back now, and I thought that since we're at the end of May, I would do a May reading wrap-up video. Excuse me. Just go through the books that I read in May, yeah, and then hopefully tomorrow, which is a Sunday, is the beginning of June, first day of June. I'll do a June TBR hopefully tomorrow, and hopefully tomorrow I'll be a bit more or less scruffy. Just came out from traveling and just didn't have time to even hygiene myself. But anyway, with that, let's go to the books that I read in May. The first one I read is actually an e-copy, or I read it on Project Gutenberg. It's an old 19th century Victorian novel. This was part of Steve Donahue. For those of you who don't know who Steve Donahue is, he's a big booktuber, big book critic and booktuber here on YouTube. He did a read-along of Anthony Trollope's Mr. Scarborough's Family, which I read along with. I'm sorry if there's glare, but you can probably see the other side of my bookshelf. I've got this book shelf, I've got it parallel another bookshelf that's identical to this one, so you can probably see it. But this is the, I don't know, I guess this is a classic cover. I read it on Project Gutenberg. I didn't have a hard copy, but I read it in conjunction with Steve's read-along. So using this iPad, I put half the video was his YouTube channel, and half of it was the text, and I just read along. So that was very interesting. Anthony Trollope, for those who don't know, was a Victorian author, maybe not as well known as Charles Dickens, but certainly a very prolific writer. And the Mr. Scarborough's Family, I think that's the title that I should know. Yeah, Mr. Scarborough's Family. It was his last book, the last book he wrote before he died, and you can tell he was writing it as a master at the pinnacle of his craft. It's just a very, very engaging story, a very simple premise which Trollope builds into a very grand story about a man, a gentleman with a big inheritance, and who has doubts about who to give his inheritance to. His older son, who is the legitimate heir, but who's a hopeless gambler, a gambling addict, and his younger son, who, although more, how can we say, let's say, less of a gambler, let's just say more straight-laced, but not a very nice guy, just an evil guy. So that conundrum, but it builds. I made a really bad job of describing it, but I've been reading, this is now, I think, could be the 7th or 8th Trollope book I've read. I've read a lot of the Barchester, or not the Barchester, the I guess it's called the, I should have checked this before I started the video, the Prime Minister, Palliser, the Palliser novels. I think I've read all of them. Maybe I'm missing one. And then the Barchester novels, I've read the two, Barchester Towers and the other one, which the name escapes me as well. But so I've read some Trollope. I've read maybe 6 or 7. You add Mr. Scarborough, that's probably 8. I should count them and let you know how much I've read or what I've read. But from what I've read, there's nothing I don't recommend. Whatever Trollope you pick up, you're probably in good hands. You'll probably enjoy it. So that was one book I read. The next books I read, the rest of them are all hard copies, so I can show them to you. Um, One of them was linked to Historathon. Um, so since the beginning of the year, I only started this channel in last month, or sorry, this month, May. So this is my first month. Uh, I started this channel a month ago. So, but if you go back to the beginning of the year, I followed the Historathon non-fiction sort of guide to reading. So I think Historathon is created by a bunch of booktubers who are encouraging readers to read history. So I've been following their path. They've divided the year into 4 quarters, and each quarter is a section of human history. So quarter one, which was January to March, began from prehistory to, I think it was 500 AD. That's the first quarter, and that I did before I started this channel. Read a bunch of books, mostly Roman history, and then from quarter two, which is April to June, which will go into next month, is from the year 500 AD or CE to 1500, that period. So that's what I read this quarter or this month, and I'll read more into next month. And then from August to September is 1500 to 1820, and then the last quarter, which is October, November, December, that'll be 1820 to the present. So that's much later, but for quarter two, in June, I read books, again, from 500 AD or 500 CE to 1500 AD or 1500 CE. So 500 to 1500. And again, I chose books. I've got a lot of books, and I've got a lot of TBRs. So even before I started this channel, I had decided that what I would do this year is focus on books that I don't want to keep, that I need to clear, get them read, and get rid of them, basically, to make more space for my shelves for newer books. So again, I choose the books, and I'm thinking that these are books that I bought usually on a whim. I bought them, they were really cheap. I bought them when I was younger and a bit more of an idealistic reader, and just picked up whatever I saw, really buying without thinking. So those kind of books have accumulated, and I want to get rid of them. Some of the books that I've read I've actually enjoyed, that I might keep, but for others I need to really decide what to keep and what to get rid of, because I can't keep them all, unfortunately. So with that, you'll see these books that I've chosen aren't really the best books in my library. They're books I'm trying to actually get rid of, or I think that I could axe or get rid of. So with that, and with Historathon, as I said, I tried to purge my Roman history for the first quarter. For the second quarter, which is 500 AD to 1500 AD, I decided to focus on my Mongol books about the Mongol Empire, basically. Genghis Khan, his sons, most notably Kublai Khan, who was mostly ensconced and settled in China, was in charge in China, and then to the west in the Middle East, the part of the region where I'm from. For those of you who don't know, I'm based in the Middle East, in the United Arab Emirates, in the heart of the Middle East. The Mongols reached all the way to the Middle East under one of the Genghis's descendants, Hilagu, who sacked Baghdad famously in 1258. Mongols also controlled most of what is today Russia and Kazakhstan, the whole Russian steppe. They reached all the way into Europe, Poland and Hungary as well, but never penetrated Western Europe. The peak of their empire was into Syria and the Holy Land. They were never able to penetrate into Africa, Egypt, and eventually Africa. But anyway, so that was the Mongol, and they were definitely in that period. And I read a couple of books in April, but I just continued reading in this month, in May. One of them is by Robert Marshall, and it's called Storm of the East. the Mongols from Genghis Khan to Kublai Khan. A big subject in a very small book. So that's why I said, this book I found really cheap. I said, just, I was curious. I picked it up. It says here, the story of the greatest empire in history, which is, you can make the argument, but again, in this size of a book, maybe a bit difficult. Although Robert Marshall does a decent job, Mongol history has always started very difficult because Genghis Khan, the founder of the empire, was very obscure. We know very little of him. We have very little outside accounts. Most of it is mythology mixed with Mongol history, and then you really have to know your Mongol/Siberian history to understand. But once the Mongols become an empire and get into China, or they get into the Middle East, or they get into Russia, you start to see their global influence, and then it becomes really exciting history. And that's the same with this book. Starts a bit difficult to comprehend, to understand Mongolian. You need a map of Mongolia open while you're reading about Genghis Khan, but once his sons take over and they start to become a global empire, it starts to get very interesting, and they start having, negotiations with foreign powers, etc. The other thing that surprised me about this book is it's published in 1993, but this edition, I bought this recently, and I bought it brand new at a remainder sale. So I don't know, is it still in print? It was good. I don't know if I'll keep it. I think this can go to the axe. One thing I'm learning about while reading Mongol history is there's really or about the Mongol Empire. It's like the Roman Empire, it splits into two. It actually splits into three areas. There's the Eastern Mongol Empire, which is Mongolia and China. And that's where somebody like Kublai Khan comes into the picture as the Mongol Emperor of China. And then there's the Western story, which is the Mongols in the Middle East. And so I think I'll see maybe in June, although I'll do my June TBR in another video. I do have two books that'll allow me to continue into the two strands. One of them is A Brief History of Kublai Khan by Jonathan Clements. And this will talk about the Mongol Empire in China. And then this one is called The Mongol Storm. It's by Nicholas Morton. And this is the making and breaking of empires in the medieval Near East. So this talks about the Mongols in the Middle East, or the Near East. And their interactions with Muslims in the Middle East, interactions with the Crusaders in the Middle East at this time, and the whole alliance. One of the surprising things here is that the Muslims and the Christians, or the Catholic Western Christians, actually come together or at least make an alliance to counter the Mongol storm. One of the few times we see Muslims and Christians coming together against animist, atheistic, nomadic, I guess the word is barbarians in their term, but as Robert Marshall argues, and in other Mongol histories that I've read, the Mongols were not as barbaric as we think. They were nomadic, yes. They were quite bloodthirsty, I guess is the word. But they were also very tolerant of different religions. They opened trade. They were very open-minded in terms of religion, and also allowed. It was the Mongol Empire that encouraged the Silk Road and the trade between the Far East and China through the Middle East and to Europe. And it was just couple of years after the Mongols that we start seeing things like the Renaissance, etc. So again, a fascinating subject. Don't know if this one will stay. It's a very well-written book, but perhaps there'll be better Mongol histories, or this is, if I had to keep one history of the Mongol Empire, I don't know if it'll be this one. I'll put it that way. Put it gently that way. So that was that. The next subject I've been reading, also trying to clear my bookshelves, is I've got quite a few books about the Windsors, the royal family of the United Kingdom. One book I read this month was by Sarah Bradford, and it's called Queen Elizabeth II: Her Life in Our Times. Now, I got this book. I got it because the month before I read. I don't have a cover to it, but it's this book. It's Elizabeth by Sarah Bradford. This Queen Elizabeth biography was written in 1996, and so it's a bit dated. It doesn't go into the death of Diana. It kind of ends 1 year before Diana's death. So it's really good on the early reign of Queen Elizabeth. This I thought was a continuation. It's much smaller, so I thought it was a continuation from 1996 to the present, or whenever this was published, which was 2012. I thought it would be a continuation, but it's not. It's more of a summary of Queen Elizabeth's life. As you can see, the difference in the size. This is really big, and this one is much smaller, but this is really well written. I don't know if it's because I read this and I had a background before I read this, but this is really well written. It goes into in a very short amount of time, goes through the long life of Queen Elizabeth. Again, written a good decade before her death, but covers most of the important stuff. Again, in a short book that wouldn't discourage somebody who doesn't read nonfiction that much. So I recommend this book definitely. Sarah Bradford's a master of the biography genre. She's written many Windsor biographies, this as well as this, and one about Diana, etc. So really recommend it. Is Elizabeth the most interesting? I don't know. People say she's one of the greatest queens that ever ruled or reigned in England or in the UK. I don't know. I never see. I don't really see I don't see what all the fuss is about, to be honest with you. Maybe this is controversial, but I really don't see. I think she was a bit. I mean, her favorite pastime was horse racing. She liked nothing other than horse racing and dogs. That's the only thing she liked. Everything else she had to do as a duty. She had to do it. If she was a normal person, she would be, I don't know, she'd probably be a destitute horse racing gambler. So she's not the most interesting person. She's a bit boring, I might say, but the people around her are interesting. So Prince Philip, her husband, is interesting. King Edward, her uncle, Edward VIII, who abdicated the throne, is interesting. Her son Charles is okay, maybe a bit interesting, but then Charles's wife, her daughter-in-law, and the mother of her grandchildren and the heir to the throne, Princess Diana, was interesting. So Princess Diana is interesting. King Edward VIII, her uncle, is interesting. Prince Philip, her husband, is interesting. Her mother, to a degree, her sister Margaret, Princess Margaret, is very interesting. I guess later on, Harry and Margaret Harry and Meghan are interesting. She's just a bore, but everybody around her is interesting. So I like those chapters that dealt with her husband, with her uncle, with her daughter-in-law Diana, with her sister Margaret, her mother to an extent. But again, yeah, I've been reading trying to clear my Windsor library. I don't know if I'll keep one of these. The problem is I don't have a jacket for this. I don't know if it's worth keeping. So maybe I'll keep this, maybe get rid of both. I don't know. I'm still not sure. Maybe I'll read more and I'll let you know. But again, a good book to read about a subject which is mildly interesting, especially her family around her are interesting. Herself, I don't know. I don't know. She's so circumscribed as a monarch. There's really not much she can do other than her duty, like her official duties. So, um, but the others who have um, who, who still have the royal title, but they don't have the official duties. They make for interesting reading. One of them, again, is the next book I read. This is Kate, The Making of a Princess by Claudia Joseph. Yes, Claudia Joseph. This is about Princess Catherine, known as Princess Kate, or Kate Middleton. This is a story of, the future Queen of England, if she stays married to Prince William. Already given him birth to 3 children, so already etched her name in the history of the British monarchy. But again, Kate is very interesting because she's not of royal blood. In fact, this book is published in 2009, and it's The Making of a Princess. This is the early life of Kate and when she met the prince at university and their early relationship, and it concludes with, it's a non-fiction biography, but it's kind of like, is he going to propose to her? Is he going to propose to her? And then it ends with the propose, and it ends before the wedding. But basically, so it's the early life of Kate, and kind of introducing the world or the British public to this new figure, very important figure. So it doesn't cover the wedding, doesn't cover the birth of the children, and doesn't cover her recent health issues with the cancer, etc. But it does talk about her and her family, the origins of her family, and again, especially to put it short, it's how this is a guide of how how white trash marries into prince, basically. I mean, her father's side of the family is pretty. They're not aristocracy, but they're wealthy. But her mother and her maternal side is really poor. They're from the northeast of England, coal miners, really bottom of the heap. And to imagine that their descendant Kate would become or enter into the halls of royalty is an interesting story. Again, it's not a big book. This one I don't think will stay. It was interesting to read, but again, I'm just trying to get rid of my Windsor library, trying to prune it and try to get it cleared to make more space. So with that, I'll go to the next book, and that is the next book is actually is another work of fiction. So this book is a work of fiction, but I said I'd read it now. Again, I want to clear it from my library, from my shelves, because I need more space. It's sort of, although it's fiction, it's historical fiction, and it's sort of it fits into the Historathon 500 AD to 1500 AD. Sort of fits in. Well, that reading challenge is made for nonfiction. You're supposed to read histories, but I just want to get rid of this, so I said I'd read it now. It's by Raymond Khoury, and it's called The Templar Salvation. So I read this month, and last month I actually read the prequel to this, which is by the same author, and it's called The Last Templar. So I read this last month, and I read this month. Big books. This one, of course, made his name. It became a bestseller. This one is good. I don't know if it's better than this, but it's good. These books are. It's very similar to the Dan Brown sort of Da Vinci Code. Archaeologist in the present discovers secrets about the past, and then it becomes an adventure, crime, sort of action thriller sequence. Both of them, I think, are written. I mean, I got these books. Again, I don't usually read historical fiction. This isn't really my cup of tea, but I like the Crusader cover, and then the name is also very Middle Eastern. And it turns out Raymond Khoury is of Lebanese origin, so I was intrigued by that when I picked up these books. and yeah, again, it's written like a script, like a Hollywood script, just page turner. But surprisingly, especially this one, some interesting prose and parts. This is a writer, you can tell who's writing energetically, who's writing, somebody who enjoys writing. Uh, um, very few shortcuts taken. Good action paced, if you like action paced sort of books or even movies. I don't think this has ever become a movie, but it could be. This one, especially this one as well. Um, this one, the first one, deals more with um, the Templars, the Vatican, etc. This one is based more in Istanbul, which is at the time Constantinople, and in Anatolia and Turkey. So nice setting for this book, more Middle Eastern than the first one. The first one jumps between the Vatican and modern day America, New York. This one is mostly in historical Constantinople and present day Istanbul, but again, well written in parts, nice, engaging, action-packed page-turner thriller sort of thing, but also with a lot of historical context. And again, I think these books, I think he wrote them, and then Dan Brown came out with the Da Vinci Code, and it became a mega seller, and I think that pushed these publishers to say, hey, let's push your manuscript out. And so I think it was a phase. And this one is from 2000. Let's just see the date. This one is from 2010, and the first one, the Last Templar, is from 2005. So I think those times there was the whole Dan Brown Da Vinci Code trend, for lack of a better term. So I think that came in at that time, but this isn't anything you could. I mean, it's not. I don't mean to say that he's just copying. I think he wrote it at the same time. The books probably got rejected, and then when publishers saw that Dan Brown was moving units, and his movie came out and sold in the billions, they're like, let's release these kind of books. And anyway, but that doesn't take away that I don't see any copying or it's very original, and very interesting, and mixing thriller with history. So again, if you like that kind of thing, then definitely, yeah, you should go for it. Give it a shot. So there's that. The next book, I promise you I'm finishing. I know this video is dragging, but I read 8 books in May. So actually, let me count them: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, 8. 8 books. So I'm almost done, I promise. One of the other shelves I want to get rid of, I have a couple of biographies. It's things I used to buy. I buy cheap, and I think it's interesting. One of them that I purchased, maybe I purchased too many of them, but I'm determined to read them and then to see if to keep them or to get rid of them. One of them that I did pick up is by Mick Wall, and it's the Last of the Giants, the true story of Guns N' Roses. So one of the things that I used to not collect, but I picked them up if they were cheap, are rock and roll biographies. I'm not a musician. I appreciate music, but I can't play any instrument. I wasn't even a big rocker when I was younger or even now. But I don't know. I guess reading about them, maybe I can live vicariously through the lives of rock stars. They live very glamorous lives, lots of music, lots of glamorous parties, drinking, lots of women involved, lots of concerts, traveling. So it's interesting, and I guess that's why I picked these up, but I don't know why I did, and now I'm trying to get rid of them. But I don't want to just get rid of them. I want to read them and then see if they're worth keeping or not. This one, Mick Wall, um, it's a very nice cover. And Guns N' Roses, again, they were big before my time. They were big in the mid 80s is when they blew up, and they reached their peak in the early 90s, but then by the mid 90s, they were, for all intents and purposes, over, finished, has been. It's not that music tastes change, and so again, the title "Last of the Giants," the last rock band, is the argument that Mick Wall makes, and I guess you can say that they get so 1985, 86, 80s, and then into 1991, 92. But then the grunge movement, Nirvana, and the whole grunge movement sort of um, it was a big dividing line between the classic rock and roll from the 70s and 80s and the 90s grunge, much heavier sort of sound. But in their time, Guns N' Roses were huge, and they were very big because this was the age of, this was the mid to late 80s, early 90s. This is when record companies really put a marketing budget, and they turned their bands into corporate machines, into money sucking. Just, you can see Guns N' Roses have always been good at their marketing. I mean, this is a book. I don't know if this is an official, but it's nice, and actually this book is really nice. It's like really well designed. If you're a rock fan, you like reading rock, this will be it'll look good on a bookshelf or like a rock. If you've got CDs and records and then these rock books, if you've got like a little shrine maybe in your room or something, this will look nice. But yeah, what was I going with it? Yeah, so a group that was groomed and marketed. Nowadays, music you can just post on YouTube, and you can do it independently, just like you can write books and publish independently. You can do the same with music, but in their time, in the 80s and 90s, you had cassettes, CDs, you had to record, you had to go on tour. There's no email, there's no internet, there's no cell phones, it's all word of mouth. And the other thing is, Guns N' Roses, although their front man Axl is originally from Indiana, he goes to LA young, and then their lead guitarist, the famous Slash, you all know who I'm talking about. Slash has a very unique look with the hair. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to find. Yeah, that's Axl, and that's Slash, a famous guitarist. Slash is from Los Angeles. The band is mostly from Los Angeles. This was at a time where there was no marketing. Is it cool in LA, and then it's cool all over America, and eventually all over the world. This is the peak of LA, that 80s 90s peak, which I don't know still exists. Basically, if you're big in LA, that's all you need to do, and that's what Guns N' Roses. They started on the LA scene, just made a buzz, and from there they conquered America, and from there they became a global phenomenon. So it's a well-written book. Mick Wall is a journalist. He's a rock journalist. He's a professional rock and roll writer. Most rock and roll books, biographies, etc., are going to be written by musical journalists in the big magazines, your big rock magazines especially. I think it's a small clique, but just looking at the list of books that Mick Wall has written, just to give you an idea, he's written biographies of Prince, the Foo Fighters, a biography of the Doors, Lou Reed, AC/DC, Black Sabbath, Metallica, Led Zeppelin, Bono, Mr. Big, Ozzy Sharon, Pearl Jam, and a couple of other books about Guns N' Roses. So he's a professional writer who's written biographies of a lot of the bands of this period, this sort of, let's say, mid 70s to early 90s period. That's not to take anything away from him. Is you can tell he's a practiced author. He's a practiced writer. Uh, there's a big book, but it reads well. Um, I, I don't know. He's written other books about Guns N' Roses, so this one, I don't know. I think he's trying to talk more about the later. The problem with Guns N' Roses, like a lot of rock bands, there's when fame gets in the way, and then their lead singer Axel was a little bit in his younger days. I think he's mellowed out now, but his younger days he was a little bit of a rock star diva. But I mean, to be fair to him, he if you see videos of Guns N' Roses live, Axel, his performance, the amount of energy required, the way he sings, you know, uh, let's just say it requires a lot of. Not anybody can do it. Let's just put it that way. And I don't know, but basically the band breaks up for a long period. Though most of the, let's say from the mid '90s until 2010s, the band aren't even talking to each other. And then finally they come back together. They say, oh, they've grown, and for the anniversary. Now they say it's for, you know, for the fans and for music, but it's really for the money. I think they were facing financial issues, and they said the only way we can recoup our money is to come back as middle-aged, overweight, balding men and go back on tour and make money again, because uh, I think there was financial issues. They just probably needed the money. That's why they came back together. I don't really think they even like each other anymore, the band. I'm not doing a good job describing, but basically what I'm trying to say is that I think there are other books that Mick Wall has written about Guns N' Roses that might be a bit more. The early part about describing how the band come together was a little bit rushed. Like he's written it in another book, and he wants to get to the later part, the more contemporary part of Guns N' Roses. Um, so that's where a lot the book is after the 90s, after the peak, what happens after, how each band member goes his own way, and then how they reunite much later when they're really old. Uh, but yeah, again, I've got a couple of rock and musical biographies that I bought sometimes when they're cheap, just for because I thought I could just read them, and now I want to get rid of them. I need to make space at my shelf. So I read this, and I can get rid of it now. I think somebody who likes music, who likes Guns N' Roses, who might want this nice cover, this nice look, it's very collectible, I guess, will probably love it more than I did. But it's always interesting, these rock bands. A lot of them have similar stories, but they are interesting sometimes to read. Get some of the glamour feeling, and just live, get an exposure to the rock star lifestyle. I guess that's the reason why I get them. I have two more books. One of them, two more books to show. One of them is Mark Stein's Passing Parade. These are articles, obituaries, and appreciations. Mark Stein is a right-wing, pro-Trump. He was pro. He was pro. He was a neocon, very conservative, very right-wing. He sometimes he when Rush Limbaugh used to. I think Rush Limbaugh passed away, but when he had his radio show and he'd need the day off, Mark Stein would come in his place to host the show. So very right wing. And then when Trump came, went on the Trump bandwagon. This book is from 2006. So I got to know about Mark Stein during the Iraq War. He was one of the few journalists in America who were beating really till the end that the Iraq War was the right thing to do, that the invasion of Iraq was the right thing to do, that yes, there's an insurgency, etc., but we should stay the course. So that's when I got aware of Mark Stein. And he's a good writer. I might not agree with his politics now, but he's a good writer. I have to give it to him. And these aren't very political books, political articles. These are his obituaries about, mostly about famous people, a lot of musicians. Before he got into politics, he used to write reviews for theater, like theater critic, Broadway, etc. So there's a lot of that in here, but there's also, from the name, you can see the parade, I guess, a lot of musical, but a lot of other things. So you have Aaron Spelling, Ronald Reagan, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, Prince Rainier of Monaco, Diana, Princess of Wales, Tupac, John Profumo, Idi Amin. Yeah, those kinds of. So not very political, but very well written, funny. I give him that. He's funny. But you can see his politics seeping through. He's very anti-Diana, very pro-monarchist. He's pro-Reagan and his Reagan obituary. Very tough on the African dictators, who, I guess, tough on African dictators who were anti-colonial and anti-British. So yeah, his politics does seep through in his writing, but good writer. I'm glad I picked this up and read it. I read almost one a day just throughout the month. Just a change of taste while reading the other books that I've been showing you. So again, I want to make space in the library. This one probably will go, but let's see. And then the last book is probably the best book I read this month, and it's connected to the whole historathon reading the historathon reading challenge, but it's a much broader history, but it's linked to Mongols. It's by Anthony Satin, and it's called Nomads. This is a really good book. This is definitely staying. This isn't going anywhere, but this is, Nomads. Basically a history, and not very long, but it's basically a history of the world, not from civilization, but from the nomads. So for every Mesopotamia and Egypt that you have, there were nomads lurking on the sidelines. The same with Rome and Greece. The same with the later basically the argument that he makes is that we shouldn't look at history as a ancient Egypt, Greece, Rome sort of axis that is civilized cities, city-states, and empires. We need to also look at the nomads. And the argument that Anthony Satin makes is that these nomadic peoples regenerate civilization. That civilizations build cities, they build walls around their cities, they get very comfortable in cities, they get rich, they become very, there's a lot of getting too comfortable. The word escapes me, but, and that creates weakness. They become soft. Empires become soft. They become too decrepit. And it's these nomads that come and take over and renew a civilization, because they live out in the deserts, in the steppes. They live migratory lives. They live very difficult lives. They're usually very just difficult, nasty, short, brutish lives. So they come in and destroy empires that are too lavish, too comfortable. So think the barbarians who invade Rome. Think of the Muslim, the Arab invasions of the remnants of the Roman, Byzantine, and Persian empires. Think of the Mongols. The Mongols play a big part just smashing cities, the nomadic Mongols on horses, just smashing capital after capital, Samarkand, Beijing, Baghdad, Damascus, um, the whole Persian, getting into Russia, destroying big parts of Poland and Hungary. Uh, and then it goes on. It's again a history of the world through nomadic history of the world, basically. Again, I'm doing very bad describing it, but um, it continues. It concludes the end. The argument that Anthony Satin makes is that the nomads have always played an important part in history, although at the end it becomes very clear that this nomadic lifestyle that played a big part in world history is slowly dying. From the 1600s, the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, the superiority of Europe, and then the global colonization of the world by Europeans has completely destroyed nomadism. The last nomads in Africa were colonized by Europeans. The nomads, the Aborigines of Australia, again colonized by the British. In America, the end section of the book talks about the Native Americans who have been driven out of their homelands, and their numbers, and the death of the bison and the buffalo and all of that stuff. So nomads probably are not going to make a comeback anytime soon. Settled civilization has become predominant, but Anthony Satin argues we shouldn't forget the lessons that nomads and nomadism teach us about ourselves and about our future. So very, very well. I'm not doing it justice. It's a really well written book. I really enjoyed reading it. Where I live was a very Bedouin nomadic existence before oil was discovered. Once oil was discovered, they created cities, and one can make the argument, as Anthony Satin makes, is that they've renewed. We can say sort of gave a new vigor to Arab civilization. Some of the more settled populous countries are going through very difficult times. Egypt economically, Iraq due to economics and war, Syria due to economics and war. These countries used to be much more developed than the nomadic Arabian Peninsula, but it's now the Arabian Peninsula that has, and their nomadic population that have become settled, that are ahead of the more civilized, more urban or urbane regions of the Middle East. So, again, very interesting. Very interesting for people who like Asian history. Again, it's the European, and Europe doesn't really have too much of a history of nomadism. North America did with the natives, but it was the Europeans who came in and pretty much ended it. So I don't know. Maybe Europeans will find this interesting, but anybody who likes Asian history, anybody who's read Asian history or African history will know how important nomadism is to history. It's simply the case. Much more so than in Europe and North America, and I think that's why it's not written as much or not known as much, because most of European, North American history is very non-nomadic, let's just say. But yeah, that's all I've got for today. Those are the 8 books I read in May. I hope you enjoyed reading this, watching this as much as I enjoyed making it. I'll be back probably tomorrow, I hope, and I'll do a TBR what I'm going to read in June. But until then, I hope you have a good day and a good weekend. Salute, Booktube.